Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is chapter 24 of You Had Me at Hey, and this one is titled Dinner at the Jirou Residence. You and Jirou texted a little longer, and then you went to bed, excited to be having dinner at her house tomorrow night. The next night came and you arrived with your mum and dad at the Jirou residence. "Hello, Lin family," Jirou's dad greeted happily as he pulled the door open. "Hey, Toku," your dad said with a little chuckle and a smile as he reached his hand out and shook Jirou's dad's hand. Come in, and hi, Mrs. Lin, long time no see," he said with a smile as he gave her a hug and ushered her in. "And Yin, it's a pleasure to meet my girl's girlfriend," he added as he gave you a wink. "Dad, you're so embarrassing," Jirou's voice deadpanned from behind her father as she approached the door. "Hey, cutie," you greeted her as she stepped around her dad. "Ugh, you're no less embarrassing, Yin," she deadpanned again. Her dad chuckled. "I like you already, Yin," he said with a laugh. Come in. Mrs. Jirou's just setting up for dinner now." You smiled goofily and reached for Jirou's hand, squeezing it gently as you leaned in and kissed her on the cheek. "I missed you," you whispered with a loving smile at her. She blushed. "Missed you too, babe," she said back shyly. You pulled her along with you as you walked down the hall, following the voices of your mum and dad and Jirou's mum. "Hi, Yin," Mrs. Jirou said sweetly as you entered the room, hand in hand with her daughter. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "Same, Mrs. Jirou," you said with a smile at her. "Oh, please call me Mum," she said with a smile. You beamed. "Okay, Mum," you said excitedly. Jirou just shook her head and had a small smile on her face. So you led her over to the table and sat down. She sat down next to you, and dinner began. Jirou's parents were lovely, and you could see where Jirou got all of her good qualities from. You were stoked that both your and her parents were being super civil and accepting, and you thought back to yesterday when everything had hit the fan. Man, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that it would end up like this. This is the best possible outcome, you thought as you glanced at your beautiful girlfriend beside you. How frickin' lucky am I? After dinner, Jirou dragged you away to her room so she could show it to you. "Whoa, it's like a replica of your dorm room," you laughed. "Or is my dorm room a replica of this room?" Jirou asked in her usual calm voice, tilting her head to the side with a cheeky smile, twirling an earjack between thumb and finger. "Well, either way, both are amazing because they're your room," you said as you turned and grabbed her into a hug and spun her around as you made your way across to her bed and dropped her down onto it. She squealed and giggled as you fell on top of her. "Already?" she chided with a small chuckle, lifting her earjack to boop you on the nose. "Didn't you learn anything from the last time we got frisky in your room?" "Yeah, but this time it's your room," you replied as you bent your head down and locked lips with her. After kissing for a little while, she pulled back from you. "The school festival's next week," she said suddenly. "I've been meaning to ask you to come." "I'd love to. Wouldn't miss it for the world," you replied with a giant grin on your face. "We're going to be starting rehearsals tomorrow if you want to come to that too," she asked as she ran her earjack up and down your arm. "Sounds fun. I love your class. They're all hilarious," you said excitedly. That reminds me, when's your submission date for your song?" she asked. "Have you started anything?" "F is for frick," you wailed, your face contorting in dread. "I really got to start that piece, but it needs to be hella good, otherwise I'm screwed." "Do you need any help?" Jirou asked calmly. "You've helped me heaps. I want to help you too." I don't know what I want to do yet, so I'll let you know, yeah?" you replied with a weak smile. "Okay, babe, but don't leave it too long," she said as she tapped your nose with her earjack. "But I'll have to step down as president of the procrastination club if I do it on time. And I've been the president for so long," he joked. "I can't afford to lose that title." Jirou snorted with amusement and sat up. "All right, your resignation letter," she jeered. The following day you arrived at the gates of UA to attend the band practice, and Jirou let you in with a hug and a kiss. "The boys are practicing the effects today for the festival, so if everything turns to shit, blame them," she said dryly as she walked beside you. You laughed. "What effects are we talking about here?" you asked with amusement. "Okay, well, they're suspending Ayama from the roof as a human disco ball, Todoroki's shooting ice shards everywhere, and Karishima is shaving it with his quirk to create snowflakes," she said in a monotone reply. "There are some other things happening too, but the ones I just told you about are the ones I'm most concerned about." Sounds like potential death. I'm in," you said brightly. "God," she whispered, not even looking at you. She led you to the auditorium where the song and dance would be held, and the first thing that you saw was Karishima with his shirt off. "Man, I'm not straight, but that's a hella fine body if you ask me," you whispered to Jirou. I can appreciate, she replied slyly. You looked around to see who else was there, and it appeared the whole class was. Where's that Bakugo guy? You thought. You wanted to make sure you and he were at least on talking terms since the rehearsal in your studio, the one where the rest of the band left him behind and you had inserted your own drum beat into the song. Eventually you found him, leaning up against the wall, arms crossed across his chest and a deep scowl on his face. Yeah, maybe I'll go talk to him later, you thought as you turned and followed Jirou towards the stage. As you were about to look away, you saw Krishna walk past him. Bakugo reached a hand out subtly and ran his fingers along Krishna's abs, causing the redhead to blush. The spiky red-haired cutie glanced at the scowling blonde, and Bakugo shot him a wink, still with scowl on face, causing Kiri to blush even more. "Oh my god!" you gasped, whispered as you ran up to Jirou, grabbing her arm to get her attention. "I just saw the cutest thing ever!" you squealed. Bakugo just touched Kiri's abs, and he blushed, and then Baku winked at him. It was adorable. I'm about to spaz out. "Oh, so they are a thing," Jirou commented quietly. "Interesting." You both continued up on stage, and watched as Ayama was hoisted up to the ceiling on a rope. Midoriya was the guy chosen to run along the beam and pull Ayama along so that all of the audience got the chance at being under the disco ball, and the first trial run was a disaster. No one really knew what Midoriya's quirk was, and you noticed it seemed to be some kind of power quirk, because all of a sudden he could become super strong and quick, as this is exactly what happened with Ayama, who got whisked from one side of the auditorium to the other in about 3 seconds flat. "Sacre bleu!" Ayama gasped dramatically. "Midoriya-kun, that was too quick!" he berated in his effeminate French accent. "Speak in English!" Bakugo shouted from the floor as he looked up at Ayama. "No one in here speaks croissant!" You snorted with laughter and had to bury your head into Jirou's shoulder. "Oh, this is going to be a disaster." Jirou sighed with her arms crossed, while in the background Midoriya was apologising profusely to the dangling Ayama. Well, that was a fail," you chuckled. "What's the next thing they have to do?" Test out the ice to snow thing," Jirou replied. "Todoroki will make the ice and Kiri will shave it." "Okay, sounds easy enough," he said with a shrug. "What could go wrong?" You watched as Todoroki stood idly on the sidelines, waiting for his cue to shoot ice. At the signal, he raised his right arm and detonated a ream of ice from his palm, firing it across the auditorium to the other side. "Okay, well it reaches," Jirou commented. "That was one thing we wanted to test, because on the day he'll be up there," she said, pointing to the roof. "You guys don't do things by halves, do you?" he said with a laugh. "No, babe, we go plus ultra on everything," Jirou replied with a smirk. You turned your attention back on Todoroki, who had watched him make a large ice cube, then hand it to Kirishima, who hoisted it up onto his shoulder, and jogged over to Ayama, who had been let down by Midoriya. "Hoist me up, Midoriya!" Kirishima called to the greenette as he grabbed onto the rope that Ayama was still tied to. "But Kirishima-kun," Ayama begged, "the ice will wet my perfectly pressed uniform." "I'll be careful," Kirishima promised. "Okay, go, Midoriya!" he shouted, looking up at the greenette. Amazingly, Kirishima was able to hold onto the rope long enough to be lifted up to the beam in the ceiling. "He's strong," you commented. "And someone's proud," Jirou replied smugly, as she nudged you and jerked her head towards Bakugo, who was smirking from the sidelines. You then both watched as Kirishima activated his quirk and started shaving very large chunks of ice from the cube, causing a panic below. You burst out laughing, and Jirou followed suit, but clamped a hand over her mouth to stop the laughter from coming out. "This is the most beautiful disaster I've ever witnessed," you cackled, wiping a tear from your eye. Bakugo was now screaming at Kirishima, who was apologising for not being manly, and Momo was crying about the mess on the floor. "Okay, I'm going to go practice," Jirou deadpanned. Wait, now?" you laughed, watching as she turned and grabbed the guitar from the stand and stepped up to the mic that had been set up on stage. "Yes, now's the perfect time because everyone's busy," she replied. "They won't be focusing on me." The minute she started playing, the whole room stopped to listen, and you smiled while shaking your head. "Yeah, well, she definitely commands the room, that's for sure." You walked off stage and sat down on the auditorium floor, listening with some of the others. Jirou started singing, and Kaminari came running in from somewhere and raced up on stage to back her up, fumbling with the guitar and straps before finally getting it on and playing along. Tokoyami then sauntered up and grabbed his guitar, and Momo came running over too. You looked over your shoulder towards the rest of the class, and absolutely everyone was spellbound. At the end of her performance, the place erupted in cheering. "So much for no one will notice," you chuckled internally while you clapped. And there ends chapter 24. Stay tuned for chapter 25 coming tomorrow.